making my tea this morning like I told you guys. Hi, good morning everyone. So as promised from last week, I was going to switch it up this week and I was going to make tea with B, a morning thing instead of an evening thing. Good afternoon over here. So that is what, hi Samaha, hi Larissa. I was hoping that it would be easier for a lot of you guys if I did this live because it might be evening time. Hi Mr. Rickard. So we're gonna make tea. And then hopefully you guys are all going to have tea with me. And then let's chat. I've got a whole bunch of your questions that I've taken photos on my grandmother's very old phone. And I'm going to answer all your questions. I am really surprised actually on how many of you sent in such a variety of different questions. So we're going to go through them this morning. But first, we cannot do anything without the tea. Do you do this often? Oh my God, you're live. I do go live often, guys, but I never go live this early in Australian time. So I'm usually, your voice just woke me up now. I want to do my work. You know, my friends actually always pick on me because I'm so energetic in the morning. I'm such a morning person. So for any of you here that are usually joining of an evening time, because I usually do my lives Wednesdays, but at 9 p.m. Now I'm doing it 8 a.m. Sydney time. I'm usually a lot less energetic, still energetic, but not like in the morning. In the morning, I am super, super energetic. Brasilia kisses. Australian kisses. 9 p.m. UK time. Yeah. So majority of you guys on here I've noticed are either from America or the UK. So I just thought it would be easier for you guys if I did this early in the morning instead of in the evening time. Because for you guys, it's the evening time. So you can just kind of, you know, have your evening tea or maybe it's too late to have tea with me over there. You're on natural crack. Oh my God. Listen, I'm going to show you guys. Someone's just, I know in a nice way, but someone just commented that I'm on natural crack. So, seeing as you guys think I'm so energetic, I'm going to show you how. So, let's make tea because let's be real, without tea, I honestly wouldn't be this energetic. So, I'm from Germany, perfect timing. Oh, beautiful. 11 p.m. in Romania. Listen, maybe I can do this a bit earlier if that works. Maybe in Australian time I could do like, 12 a.m. in Turkey, oh my gosh. Okay, maybe next week I could do the live, let's say an hour earlier. So it would be like 7 a.m. here. Tea is good at 1 p.m. in California. That's good. 12 a.m. in Joe. Where's Joe? Never too late for tea over in the UK. 110%. It's never too late for tea, lads. Any time is a good time for tea. No! Let me show you guys how I do it before I start answering all your questions, because I know some of you ask me what's in my tea. So, here we have a pot of tea. That was meant to be... That was meant to be some, like, variation of an Irish accent that kind of, like, swayed into, like, some random British accent. It was just very confused there. All right. In my pot of tea, I have here, I'll show you guys. I have a pot, and inside is just some water and some raw sugar. I don't like white sugar or brown sugar. The only sugar I like is raw sugar. I know someone's going to be, cheeky and comment and say that's racist, but you know what I mean. Raw sugar is the only one that I really like the flavor from. For anyone who's been on these lives before, I used to use honey a lot, I know. But today we're going to use raw sugar. And with me here, if you guys can see, I have some black tea, some loose leaf tea. Last week I mentioned to you guys that I can only have loose leaf tea now because the tea in the tea bags has sulfites in it. And as I've discovered, my congestion issue in my nose was because of an allergy to sulfites, which is a preservative. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this loose leaf black tea. I'm going to get my spoon. Oh, I should probably get the tray that it's going to go into. This little mesh tray. Okay, I'm going to put it in my teapot. I'm going to get a spoon, roughly, thereabouts. A spoon of my loose leaf tea. and I'm just going to let it brew for a little bit. And that's it. I'm not going to put anything else. I could put maybe some mint. I know in my Middle Eastern culture, my Arab family, they would very much put mint in it. But even maybe a bit of lemon. This morning, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not feeling it. Sometimes it just depends on what I'm feeling and what I'm in the mood for. And that is it. Going to let it brew, and then we can have tea together, guys. And look at my little cup. It's anyway, all right. While that's brewing, let's get started with some questions, shall we? Let that brew over here take place. Right, if I've missed anything, I'm so sorry. I love your videos about your Irish dad. Guess what, guys? You will be getting more of those videos soon, because my dad, inshallah, will be coming home. He'll be back by the start of December. So he's literally got less than a couple weeks left to go before he comes back. So I'm so excited. So you guys will be getting more videos of me dad very soon. All right, now let's go to the questions that you guys have been sending in. Right, now. All right, now, the very first question you guys sent in, I've got a whole bunch that you guys sent in that I've screenshot all of them. So we're taking photos rather of. And I'm going to try and go through them one by one before the end of this live. So, very first question someone sent in. They asked me, what do I feel are the negative connotations associated with Middle Eastern people? Good morning from New Zealand. Good morning from Sydney. You're probably one of the few people on here that's actually on my on morning time, on my time zone, like roughly speaking. Most people here are all talking about how it's nighttime over there. But anyway. All right, negative connotations associated with Middle Eastern people. Obviously, I can only speak from my experience. Now, for the most part, I feel like I really should preface the answer to that question with, I feel like we have a beautiful culture. I know a lot of people talk about the negative connotations that come with being Middle Eastern. And I feel like a lot of that, I'm going to probably be really biased here, but I feel like a lot of that is experienced from females. I know personally anyway, growing up with a Middle Eastern mom, if I compare my upbringing to the upbringing of my brother, it was really different. And I know even still in other households that are even stricter than the one that I grew up in, that comparison between how Middle Eastern families can treat the boys versus the girls can be even more distinct, even have even a greater contrast in it. So personally, to answer that question from my experience, I feel like the negative connotations is, for me, mainly around the way you're treated as a female growing up. I feel like there should be a lot more of a sense of equality between the two. Now, don't get me wrong. I know some people might disagree here. I actually do understand why sometimes there is a bit of a difference between how we look at our daughters versus how we look at our sons. I know that there can be more of a fear, and I understand that. I really do. And I'm sure if I were to ever become a parent one day, I would resonate with that even more. But there are things like, for example, if you're telling your daughter that she's not allowed to date until she gets older and until she, for example, finishes university. The same rule should apply to your son. It shouldn't be a different rule of, as the classic saying goes, go sow your royal oats, so that way when the time comes, you've had your fun. That really bugs me. That kind of rule, that bias really frustrates me. But yeah, so I hope that answers your question to who sent that in. I don't really like to say names or anything because I just think I like to keep an element of privacy for you guys. But I hope you're on. If not, I'll be posting this later on YouTube anyway. But if not, then you'll be able to see your answer later on YouTube. Even in American households, I feel very similar with being very similar with being strict on the growing up of young girls and women. Yeah, there tends to be a huge disparity between how I see the females being raised versus the males. and it can be really frustrating. Excuse me, I'm just gonna blow my nose. Not blow my nose, I'm just gonna wipe my nose. It's first thing in the morning, and as I keep mentioning to you guys, I've got issues with my nose. And for some reason this early in the morning, it already feels a little bit runny. Anyway, let's move on from that. I'll just see if you guys have any comments to talk about in regards to that one. I wonder where it came from. It can't be religion, surely it's culture. So that's what I often argue about. A lot of people talk about it in a religious sense, but it's not. If you really look at, don't get me wrong, obviously there are many religious rulings in regards to, men and women. However, I genuinely feel, and as I've seen growing up, that this is more of a cultural issue. I feel like a lot of the bias between the two, the disparity between the two, is influenced from culture. All right. No. Good evening from the UK. Out of interest, how often are these live chats? I do this every Wednesday. So, Tom, I believe I go live every single Wednesday. If I'm not going to do it on a particular week, I'll let you know on my story. But I do go live every single Wednesday. It's usually at nighttime though. The thing is, I'm trying, because I know a lot of you guys are from America or the UK. I'm trying to do it in my morning time now. That way it's your evening time. That way it better suits everyone. My YouTube channel, it's the same handle as my Instagram channel. If you just go to YouTube and you type in, Bernadette.k, but it's B3 instead of BE. So same as my Instagram handle. And I upload it either today or tomorrow, and you will be able to see it all there. But yeah, every Wednesday, guys. At the moment, it's 8 a.m. here that I started it, but maybe next time I can do it at 7 a.m. So we'll see. Right, now, let's see. Okay, good. All right, I didn't miss anything. That's what I was just checking. I didn't miss anything. Do you feel that Mid-Eastern and Western duality has benefited you? If so, how? Do I? Hang on. It's not Wednesday yet. Oh my gosh, yes, guys, it's not even Wednesday for some of you. It's Wednesday for me in Australia because I've woken up. But a lot of you, it would be Tuesday evening or nighttime. So yeah, I know. Actually, I nearly forgot to pour my tea. But someone's just asked me, do you feel that Mid-Eastern and Western duality has benefited you? Okay, I actually want to pause and answer that. I know it's not sent in, but I want to answer that. So, do I feel like... I'm assuming your question is asking me being half Eastern culture, half Western culture. I'm pretty sure that's what you're asking me. Has benefited me? Yes. In more ways than I could ever put into words. How do I explain in, just one answer? First of all, I had a negative experience growing up with my mum, and my mum being the Arab, the Middle Eastern person in this equation. Now, I just got the raw end of the stick. My mum does not speak for everyone, but she blamed culture a lot for why she raised me the way that she did, which was wrong because it shouldn't have been like that. Anyway, I've then run away, as many of you know, and I've gone to I think a lot of you can hear how congested I'm starting to sound. This is really frustrating. Anyway, I've then run away to my father, and my father being the Irish person, the Western culture, as I believe you're asking here. And they've been my saving grace. Now, this is my personal experience, right? This is, please don't assume I'm implying this to everyone. So it benefited me because I had two different... Now, I suppose you could argue that culture wasn't necessary here. You could have had two Arabs in the equation or two Irish people in the equation, and the same thing could have happened. I understand that. But in my experience, I ran away from my mum and I ran away to my father, two completely different mentalities. Both of them extremely different. And I benefited from that greatly because I was able to have somewhere to go. I had somewhere to escape to. I had a place that I was able to seek refuge, if you like. Now, if you then fast forward, now 8 years since I've run away from home, do I still benefit from the difference between my cultures? I do, because do you know why? In every culture, there's what I would very generally term the good and the bad. And I feel like I get to take a lot of the positives from both. There are things that I can see in my Middle Eastern culture that I would tweak. There are things that I can see in my Irish culture that I would tweak. And that, again, that's just my opinion. But I feel like I've been able to take, you know, the beauty that I see in the Middle Eastern culture, the beauty that I see in the Irish culture, and take that on board and, you know, kind of have a really nice balance between the two. It's really, I feel like being stuck in one bubble, in this sense, I'm talking about, you know, the bubble of culture, being stuck in one context. It's kind of nice when you're able to then take yourself out and see things from a different perspective. That way you're not so, you know, narrow-minded. You're not so simplistic in your view on things, because you get to appreciate how other people see things. And so when people ask me about being mixed, when people ask me, you know, do you feel like you benefit or maybe you didn't benefit from being mixed? Would it have been better? I know a lot of people say that they feel like it would be so confusing to have been brought up with two different cultures as opposed to just one. But the thing is, I actually disagree. I feel like I actually feel like it's benefited me greatly. It's so nice, you know, to see a differing perspective, because it changes you. You don't, as you get older, you're not so one-track minded. You're appreciative of, and this could have come from anywhere. For me, it's come from growing up with two different cultures. But you're more appreciative of the fact that people are different religiously, culturally, socially. People see things and experience things differently, and that impacts on who you become as an adult. So I really appreciated growing up with the knowing I was in two different from two different backgrounds, but at the same time I was exposed mainly to the Arab culture, and then now I've had more in my latter years an exposure to the Irish culture. So it kind of balances itself out now. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope I answered that. Long story short, yes, I feel like I did. All right, taking out the tea. Now close this to keep it warm, even though it's kind of been out for this whole time. Anyway, going to take my cup and pour some tea about, 23 minutes into the live. I talk so much that I often forget. All right, move it aside. Then sláinte to anybody who's having some tea or coffee or whatever your drink of choice is tonight, guys. I love tea so much. All right, now the comments kind of paused, so anyone sending in anything, I didn't see it, I'm sorry. But I do actually want to go back, quickly to Marhaba from Bulgaria. Hi. I want to go back to answering your questions, because I realize we're already almost halfway through the live and I've answered one question that you guys have sent in and like two from the comments. Anyway, so let's keep going. All right, next question, guys. Your Catholic faith journey. It's not really a question, it's kind of a statement. So I suppose you're asking me, you know, to talk about my Catholic faith journey. So I'm gonna, please don't feel like I don't want to answer your questions, because I'm going to try and go through them quickly now, because I want to answer as many as I can. My Catholic faith journey. So I was born into a Catholic household. A lot of people don't realize this. Actually, my mother's family are also Catholic. So a lot of people assume, and I understand, you know, why, because of the fact that it's the majority, but a lot of people assume that my mum is Muslim because they're Middle Eastern, but they actually are Christian. Catholic, we're Malkite Catholics, and my father's side, Irish, are also Catholic, Roman Catholic. So I've taken I was baptized rather in my mother's family's church. I was baptized a Malkite Catholic. So a lot of the time people ask me about the veils, you know, why I wear a veil when I pray. I actually wanted to bring one because I realized a lot of you sent in questions about that. I can go grab one, it's on the other side. But I know most of the time people ask me about why I'm wearing a veil when, you know, I'm not Orthodox. The thing is, I come from the Malkite Church, and the Malkite Church was created from the Orthodox Church. So if you trace back through history a little bit, you will see that originally my family were Orthodox Christians, my mum's side, and then they've broken away and created their own church, the Malkite Church. And I hear a lot of them kind of talking about the Malkite Church as being, you know, a bit like half the Orthodox Church and then half the Maronite Catholic Church, and kind of blended in together. But when you walk into a Malkite church and you walk into an Orthodox church, you'll see that they almost look identical. That's how much, you know, you can see our heritage, our roots. So my journey, so to speak, with that is I was born into it, but I was raised with a not so religious mother. And I arguably am not that religious myself either. I know a lot of people get frustrated when they hear, you know, the younger generation saying this, but I am a lot more spiritual than I am religious, which I can talk about. But I grew up, my mum wasn't very religious at all. We didn't pray together. It was just something that we were told about, and you go figure that one out for yourself. You go have your private time, you know, with God. You discover that on your own, which I kind of, upon reflection, didn't like. Because personally, I feel like I would have liked to have had a much more developed relationship with God when I was younger. And I feel like what happened as I got older, because of that lack of foundation, that lack of, you know, religious sustenance in my household, I kind of got very confused as I got older, and I tried to, and I actually don't regret this either, because I love the educational experience I gained from it, but I kind of started to look at other religions as I got older. So I started to, when I was in high school, I started reading about Judaism, because I know originally as Christians, that's how our religion started. So I wanted to have a better understanding. I'm very curious. I'm a very curious person, and I need to understand how something works before I just accept it. So I started reading about Judaism, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was so beautiful, the elements in it that were very strict. And I know that sounds ironic, because I just said I'm not that religious, I'm more spiritual, but I enjoyed learning about it. You know, I enjoyed learning about, you know, the things that they did on their holy days and their holy festivities, etc. And then after I finished high school and I've gone into university, I started to explore Islam, and I wanted to, you know, understand that better. And I really understood, like I read the Quran. I really got into learning about it. And I loved that. I loved it. Honestly, I don't have any regrets, because like I said, the educational experience I gained from that was amazing. And should I have chosen to convert to either of them, or anything else, had I have gone into looking into that per se, there just happened to be those two that I looked into, I believe that would have been my path in life. That would have been, you know, my direction that God was taking me on. Anyway, further on into this journey that you're asking me about, I have then, as I've, you know, finished university and I've started working, I went through a number of experiences that I feel kept calling me back to Christianity. Now, remember, I said I'm a lot more spiritual than I am religious, so not to tie any, you know, as the saying goes, yeah, anyone's knickers in a knot. So please don't take me as a, you know, a religious reference here, because I am by no means a preacher. I then feel like I got called back to Christianity. I don't think why I said what I just said a second ago was because please don't feel like I think that, you know, I'm the only one with the right answer. That's why I said that. Anyway, one day I was in St. Mary's Cathedral, which many of you that follow my Instagram stories would know. St. Mary's Cathedral in Sydney is by far one of my most favorite places to go and talk to God, to go and pray. And one day I walked in, and I could even get emotional talking about this actually, but one day I went in, anyway, I'm going to run through this really quickly because I don't want to cry. I went in to the cathedral, and the choir was singing. And at this point, I was at a position in my life where I was at a crossroads, metaphorically speaking. And I walked in, I could hear the boys' choir singing. I was already reflecting on certain choices I was making in my life, not just personally, but even in terms of things that, you know, would affect my family. And I walked in, I was listening to them singing, and I just was compelled to sit down. And I sat down, and I burst into tears. I quite literally burst into tears, and I had so many different thoughts running through my head at that point. And long story short, because I do need to move on, I eventually left the church that day, left the cathedral. I went home. From my memory, I would have prayed about it. I would have reflected a lot. But what I definitely know I did do was discuss this with a few of my close friends. Actually, one of them being Jewish. Actually, I remember I called him in tears one day. I called my friend and I said to him, I was like, give me a completely different perspective. You're not Christian. You're just from a different perspective. Please tell me what you're thinking. And I'll never forget the day that he sat down and said to me that you need to listen to your heart. Sometimes you should listen to your brain, but at other times you should listen to your heart. And my heart at that point was crying out for me to build and develop my relationship more with God in the way that I was born into. And there is my journey for you. So it's a lot more intricate than that. There is so much more detail that I could talk about, and perhaps it's better suited for a live to devote, and the next Tea with B chat with you guys on another live about that. But I did promise you guys that I was going to answer all your questions, so I do need to move on. But basically, that's where my journey kind of goes with Catholicism, with God, thus far. So moving on to the next question. I really am such a yapper. I really don't know how to just stop talking. All right, I'm just going to swipe all the way down to the bottom because again the comments paused, so I have no idea what anyone has been saying. Good morrow and Merry Christmas. I am definitely in the Christmas spirit, so Merry Christmas to you too, even though it's still November, but no shame. All right. I don't see anything. I'm so sorry, but I might have, maybe because I've just missed it. But if you are sending in comments, I'm really, really sorry. It's really hard to keep up with the both. Okay. Mental health problems. So again, this isn't really a question. It's just a topic that someone's asked me to focus on. So mental health problems. Because it's just a topic you've asked me to focus on, I can't be sure exactly what you wanted me to talk about specifically. So what I'm going to say to talk about is my own journey with mental health. So as many of you know, can I get a birthday shout out? Is it your birthday studying Castillo? Happy birthday. I hope you have a really good day or night wherever you are in the world. So mental health journey. I have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So for anyone that is new here or doesn't know, I've talked about it before. Very long story short, I ran away from my mother because it was an abusive, situation, abusive childhood, abusive relationship there. And I've run away from home, and thus began a mental health journey with me trying to heal from the childhood that I had, or the childhood that I was robbed of, rather. I feel like mental health problems, because you're not asked me anything specific, I'm just going to go on a free-for-all tangent here. I feel like that is something that is really good that you're wanting to talk about. So many mental health activists have beautifully said before me today, but it is something that a conversation needs to be had about. It's something that we should all be talking about. It's something that I'm really proud as someone growing up who didn't hear mental health being talked about, at least not in any capacity that I had access to. I didn't see it as being a topic that was, readily accessible to me. It wasn't something that I could find any comfort in as a teenager who was growing up in an abusive household, abusive mother, abusive stepfather. I didn't have that. So now to see such a more in-depth conversation around this topic, especially on the online world, so therefore, in a more accessible means, is so amazing. So I feel like whatever it is specifically you wanted me to talk about, I'm sorry, because it would have been nicer if you had a bit more detail at the bottom. But I'm just going to comment and saying, as someone who has quite a substantial mental health journey that I've gone through, and I'm still going through with PTSD. It is imperative that people talk about it. And I'm not implying that people need to be very public with their private issues. I choose to do that just because I'm comfortable doing that, and just because I know that younger me would have appreciated knowing, even virtually, someone who was open about that. So that is the reason I do it. I'm not implying that anybody else needs to do it publicly. However, it is something that if you have someone you can talk to, you can open up to, you can confide in about your mental health, then definitely do it. Don't try and deal with it alone. If you're comfortable doing that, all right, to each their own. But I feel like talking to someone, especially professionals, especially, a therapist of some account, is really, really beneficial. I did that for years. If you want me to be very honest, actually, I'm considering doing it again. There's no shame in that. I know culturally it can be a point of contention for a lot of us, because culturally we're kind of raised, I know in my Middle Eastern culture, we're kind of raised that, mental health is just something in our privileged minds. And if that's not the comment you receive, the comment is usually something along the lines of, if it's not privilege, it's you don't have a substantial enough relationship with God. You're weak in your faith, which is really sad to hear it being portrayed like that. So yeah, mental health problems, definitely. My reply to that comment: you should always try and seek some form of, verbal discussion with someone about it, or some professional help about it. All right, next question. I am only on question 4, and it is now almost 40 minutes that I've been on this live. So I guess on average, you're talking about like 10 minutes a question. Anyway, my family in Jordan would tell me that mental health is a Western thing. Yeah, you see, this is what frustrates me. That's exactly what I was talking about. It's not just a Western thing, and actually, I would argue a lot of the people in the Middle East, when you consider the political environment and the subsequent economic environment that people are in and have been in over there, it's something that they very much would be well acquainted with, and if not, would need to be talking about. I know with my family, especially my teta, my Arab grandmother, definitely has a lot of mental health issues that she needs to address, and she's working through it. So yeah, it's not a Western thing. Okay, sorry, I need to move on. Next question that you guys have sent in. Right, now, feeling under pressure with the direction and ideologies of life, career, marriage, kids, house. I, as a 30-year-old, relate to that a lot, especially as a 30-year-old female who is still not married and is still living with her family. So I will tell you that it is not easy. I will tell you that in my experience, it's definitely a very serious conversation that I've had with myself many times. I've had with my partner, I've had with my family. And, in my experience, someone saying, give advice from your heart. Okay, well, in my advice from my heart, I would really say that it's not easy, but it's something that you're just going to have to trust time with. Work as hard as you can on achieving, the life that you want. Don't waste time, especially in your youth. Older you will really appreciate that, will be really grateful for it. I remember, when I was going through university and I really didn't want to do it. I was just so over it. I wanted to get out and travel. Do you know, 30-year-old me is really, really grateful to younger me for pushing through that, because it's done now. It's not something that I have to, try and tackle in my older years. Whilst there are other things I have to tackle now that I wish I did I was younger. But for example, university is one of those things that I don't. And now, what's another thing I could talk about? Travel. I'm really grateful that I did that when I could. I'm really grateful I worked overseas when I could. Do things now that older you will appreciate, but at the same time, try not to fall for the the overbearing societal pressures on you making sure that by a certain time you have a house, you're married, you have kids. Do you know what was one of the most liberating experiences for me? Was the decision to not have kids. Why? Because of the simple fact that up until the moment I made that decision was that I didn't think I could make that decision. I always felt like I'm a woman, I'm a female, one day I'm going to become a wife, and therefore I have to have kids. And once I started to realize that actually, no, I didn't, and I made that decision for myself, it was so liberating. So falling, like what you've said, you want me to talk about the pressures of life, of the ideologies of growing up. Create your own standards and expectations of yourself. I didn't want to get married young. I still don't want to get married young. I still feel like 30 is quite young for me, just because I don't want to have kids. I enjoy spending more time living, at home with my family, especially personally because I'm making up for lost time. So just for a reminder of context, I didn't get to see much of my Irish family growing up at all. And I have only had the last 8 years out of the 30 where I've gotten to spend substantial time with them. So I enjoy, not rushing off to live the rest of my life and, moving out, getting married and all of that, because I still get to spend a lot of intimate and consecutive time with my family, which I really appreciate as someone who had that stolen from me growing up. Hi, Zahra. Much love to you too. So yeah, basically create your own ideological standards. You don't need to adhere to the generally accepted standards. Focus on, like we were talking about previously, your mental health. Focus on if it's important to you, if that's, something you want to do, your relationship with God, etc. Right? Don't adhere to what you think everybody expects of you. Actually take time, and it's not going to happen in just one day. Take a week, take a month to actually reflect upon yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes a day. Write it down. What it is that you want to achieve in your life. The best thing I ever did was write things down. When I was living with my mum, a lot of the time I struggled with being happy, and I knew all I wanted was to be happy because it was the one thing that I seldom experienced. And what I used to do to try and maintain any level of happiness, even if it was short-lived, was write down on the back of my door, whether it would be a piece of paper or a whiteboard, it doesn't matter. But write down on the back of my whiteboard every single day at least 10 things that I am grateful for. Now, I didn't start doing that till I was 18 because of a book that I read. That's what triggered it. But writing things down really changes everything. It's much more active experience. So relaying that into goals, write it down, look at them, keep yourself accountable, check, am I working towards achieving things that I really want to have or be? That future, like I said at the start of this answer, that future me will be thankful for. Do something today that future you will really be grateful for. Like I said, 30-year-old me is so grateful that I finished my university studies and I did my extra education when I was younger. It's not something I have to worry about now. Find something that if you could look, into the future and, let's say 40-year-old me. What's something I could do today that 40-year-old me would be really appreciative for? For example, what am I doing right now? I'll give you an example. I'm working on my businesses. I am self-employed. I'm working on them because I made a decision to be self-employed, and it was, I decided I didn't want to work for someone anymore because it made me unhappy. Now, that's not for everyone, but it is for me. I wanted to be self-employed. And I'm hoping, I pray that future me will benefit from the decision and the work that I'm putting in now, that in the future I can look back and go, oh my gosh, thank you, Berna. When you were in your 20s, you started your own business, and in your 30s, you kept working through it, and now future me should be hopefully thankful, grateful for that. Now, someone asked me before, what does the B stand for? T with B. I'm B. B, my name is Bernadette, or Bernadette, as my teta would say. Short nickname is Berna. Some people say Bernie. I prefer Berna. But yeah, so T with B is me. I'm B. So yeah, for anyone that didn't know. Great advice. I will be using your tips to a better quality direction in my life at 57. I love that. You know where I get a lot of my influence from is from my grandparents, my Irish grandparents. They are both roughly around 80 years of age. And when I talk to them about their life, and I ask them, because why I use them as an example, because they're actually quite a happy, alhamdulillah, they are quite a happy, blessed couple. They are so happy together, in their relationship, even after over 60 years of being together. And they are happy in themselves personally. They're happy in their lives that they live and lead. And do you know, therefore I ask them, about their life. I ask them for advice and etc. etc. And they always talk about, my grandfather always talks about one thing. I took this and I never had a sip. 1 second. My grandfather always talks about one thing. How he always put work first, because he believes that at the end of the day, if you don't, you can't have a happy family. Naturally, I understand the correlation there. So my grandfather will often talk about how he will focus on work whilst he was younger, so that he always had comfort and security with his family, and then in the hopes that when he got older, he could bask in the enjoyment of his retirement. And I take a lot of that on board. I could do a lot of things in my youth now, and don't get me wrong, I travel, I spend money on things that I enjoy, like clothes and jewelry. A lot of you will see all the time I'm changing my jewelry all the time. Why is that? Because I love it. I have so much of it. So please don't think that I'm playing the Mother Teresa card, because I am by no means a saint. But what I do, which I would love to try and do more like my grandfather, is I do try to take steps now to benefit my future. To make sure that as I get older, I will have, that cliche saying, no regrets. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. I am going to move on to the next one. God help me, I'm not going to get through all of this. All right, next question. This is an easy one. Modest fashion, styling the cute headbands. Okay. Headbands, let's just talk about modest fashion for a minute. Which, by the way, on a side note, I have something really, really exciting that I'm going to share with you guys soon about modest fashion. But I'll keep you guys posted. I can't talk about it just yet, but I'll keep you guys posted when it does. But so modest fashion, let's talk about it. Someone's asked me to talk about the styling of the headbands. So recently I've started to explore modern classic modest fashion. So for anyone that doesn't know what that is, modern classic is that older style, that how shall I say, more classic, I call it elegant, classy sort of style that you would see in the early 1900s, feeding through up until about the 1950s, roughly speaking. Any historians on here, don't quote me on that. But that kind of modern classic style, okay? It's classic, but with a modern kind of touch, right? And as a result of that, I've been getting more into headbands, because I've noticed headbands is a real part of modern classic fashion. And why not? They're just so practical and they're just really pretty. Now, in terms of styling them, I'm struggling to style them, because I have very fuzzy, extremely wavy hair. It's very buffy, especially if I don't have the right treatment in. And I basically need to either bun it back when my hair is too fuzzy, so that it kind of just, keep it all nice, neat and tidy, or when my hair is professionally done, in a nice clean waves or something, or a straight hair, it's really just, finding a nice spot where your hair parts well. For me, it's the side. Some people, it's the middle. I'd love to be able to have a middle part, but it's just not me. And my hair just does this big bumpy thing. It will not part through the middle. And then just finding a nice headband that will match your outfit. So obviously I've got a black one, which is easy for me because it matches with my hair really well. And then I have it matching with my black outfits. I have a whole bunch of different headbands. So I've got a whole bunch of different colors, which I can't wait to show you guys. But basically all I do is make sure that it suits the style of my hair, which, like I mentioned, for me is either my hair being really done up nicely, or I pull it back into a slick bun, and that it matches my outfit. They're the only two like main requirements. All right, moving on. Next question. Missing your siblings and not feeling guilty. So someone's asked me to talk about my siblings and not feeling guilty. Okay, so I always have to give a bit of context because I don't know who's new here or who has missed the start of the live, etc. So brief bit of context. When I ran away from home, I had left behind 3 siblings. I left behind a brother and 2 sisters. And actually that was the hardest part, and that's why I took so long. So many people have said to me, why did it take you so long to run away? Why did you wait until you were 22 to actually leave? And the reason is them. The reason is because I really struggled to be able to leave them behind. First time watching your live. Welcome, Nadia. Welcome. I struggled to leave them behind. So you want me to talk about missing them and the guilt. I still feel guilty leaving them to an extent. I felt extremely guilty in the beginning, especially in the lead up to it. Not that there was much of a lead up, but in the lead up anyway, I felt extremely guilty. And actually, the phone that I had at the time that I ran away with, I took a ton of photos with them and before I left, because I was so nervous of the thought of running away from home, knowing that I was leaving my siblings behind, because I didn't know when I was going to see them again, and I haven't seen them again since I left home, and it's been 8 years now. I will never stop missing them. I have photos of them up in my room, the photos that I took with me. I have photos of them up. I have drawings that my sister made for me before I left up in the rooms. When I say rooms, I mean in my bedroom and in my office. It's not easy. It's really not easy. Thank you, Miranda. I appreciate it. It's not easy having to say goodbye to, for me, the best friends that I'd ever had, the only real close friends that I'd ever had at that point, because I was never really allowed to have many friends otherwise. It's not easy to say bye, and it's not easy to now have spent the last 8 years not talking to them. How do I deal with in terms of the guilt? I have resolved in the decision to accept. They are happy. They were treated extremely different to the way I was. My mum didn't treat them the way that she treated me. I assume that's because they're from a different father, and I believe a lot of my mother's issues with me were because of who my father is. So I had to resolve to the fact that they weren't being abused. They were happy. They were being treated a lot better than I ever was. And I was of no use to them if I stayed. I offered them no benefit anymore. I did what I could whilst I was with them, and I developed the relationship to some degree. I had that bond with them, and then I had to go. And I would have quite literally been nothing to them, so to speak. I obviously don't really want to delve into that too much right now, but I would have been nothing to them if I had stayed. So I have to reflect on that guilt that I feel leaving my siblings behind by reminding myself that I just don't, I served no benefit to them had I stayed. You're here in the morning. Yeah, I tried to do the live in the morning instead of the evening. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. All right, moving on. Okay. Next question. Where do we have? Oh, okay. Definitely want to talk about this before I go. Oh, somebody asked me, does your teta, so my Arab grandmother, my mum's mum, have contact with her or her grandchildren? My grandmother, my teta, doesn't talk to my mum, her daughter. They actually stopped talking long before I stopped talking to my mother. And then therefore she also doesn't have a relationship with my siblings. My mum basically won't let anyone have a relationship with them unless it's on her terms. So yeah, my teta, to answer your question, no, she doesn't talk to any of them. Not my mother, not my siblings, unfortunately. Okay. How to leave... oh, sorry, that's the next question. Sorry, I already started this one. I'll get to that one next. I really want to hear about your outlook on interfaith relationships and marriages. I feel like that's really something I should be responding with to each their own. Like, how, oh, my Irish accent. I'm glad you like my Irish accent. Thanks. Okay. Somebody's asked me to talk about that. Look, to each their own. I don't like to comment much about people having an interfaith relationship because it's really none of my business. And I personally was in an interfaith. So I've been in 2 relationships my whole life. Excuse me. I had a bit of a hiccup. I've been in 2 interfaith relationships my 2 relationships my whole life. The first one was interfaith. And I know a lot of people comment on that, especially the Christian community I have on here, tell me, as a Christian that was, never going to work out and you should have known that from the beginning and la 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 la. Look, I don't think that's very fair. I feel like to each their own. People should figure things out for themselves. They should be on their own journey. I'm not taking away from the religious rulings on these things. That's a separate issue. But let's take the context of being a very religious person out of the equation for a second. I'm not saying that I am. I'm just saying, religion in general. Let's just put that aside for 1 second and just look at the basic outline of what you're asking me to talk about. 2 people that want to come together, that in marriage, or not even, it doesn't even have to be in marriage, but you've asked me about marriage, that are from different faiths. Like I said, to each their own, but at the end of the day, from my experience of being in that situation, you have to be willing to compromise. And not just the 2 of you, not just you and your partner. It cannot just be you and your partner. It also needs to be you and your family, which a lot of the time I have, in my experience, is not ever going to be the case. Now, if you are lucky enough to be in a situation where that is the case, I am so happy for you. That is amazing because that is so rare. I know in my experience, not only was my experience the case that they wanted a lot of it to be, in my partner, my partner of the time's culture and religion. Did they not only want it to be dominated by their culture and religion, there was kind of a disregard for the fact that there was another religion. There was more of a regard for the culture. Now, mainly my Arab culture, I suppose, because they could relate to it, but not so much my Irish culture. Now, I often had that discussion with my partner, and it was not an easy one, but it had to be had, right? You can't just kind of, I don't know, bend over backwards and just let everybody, just have their way as if, your culture and religion doesn't matter. Now, I was in that relationship for quite a few years, and it got to a point in the end where I realized, better late than never, that I had to stand my ground. And that probably was the start of the end of that relationship. So what is my advice in the to sum it all up? If you are going to choose to be in an interfaith relationship, especially if you're going forward into marriage, in my experience, it is not easy. It is difficult, and people warn you against it for a reason. They warn you against it because it is difficult, but that's not to say that it can't be done. Okay, I considered it, and it didn't work out for me for a number of reasons, but that's not to say that it can't work out for someone else. All I am saying is, if you are fresh into it or if you're considering it, hear me out when I say there needs to be a balance of compromise between both you and your partner. It cannot be dominated by one or the other, and your respective families. It can't just be you 2 wanting to compromise and willing to compromise. It also needs to be your families, because if one family or both families are trying to dominate, it is actually going to influence your relationship. It's going to affect the way you guys are as a couple. And actually, that can be quite a negative thing. If you're lucky enough to be a really strong couple, then that's awesome. That you don't have to worry about that. But if you're not, it is really, really going to have such a negative impact. So if you're going to go into an interfaith relationship, make sure that you guys love and respect each other enough to compromise. Neither of you should dominate, religiously or culturally, and your families. Sit down and have a chat with your families. I sat down and had a chat with my Irish family and my Middle Eastern family, and I can promise you, telling my Christian Arab grandmother at the time that I was considering marrying a Muslim Pakistani didn't go down well. But if you care enough for your partner and respect the situation enough, respect each other enough to have that chat, then that is really a great start. And then, all I'm going to end on is I wish anyone in that situation, or any situation, but especially that, because I know how hard it is, all the best, because it is not easy. I sat down with my Irish family, and my Irish family, I'm so blessed and so lucky, because they are such incredibly relaxed and easygoing people. And at the end of the day, their answer was, if you're happy, we're happy. Do you know that? As long as you're happy, we're freaking grand, That was their answer. And I'm really lucky in that regard. And not everyone is going to react that way. But in short, because I need to wrap up this live now, in short, make sure there is a balance of compromise, and it's not dominated by one side's culture or religion over the other. Because the fact of the matter is, you both matter, you are both important, and it shouldn't be dictated by one or the other. Everyone is different. I'm just reading a comment. I am in an interfaith and intercultural marriage, and it is awesome. But my sister is in the same culture, and she says, if you pray together, you stay together. Look, I understand that, but who's to say that you can't pray together just because you're of a different faith? And a lot of the time we believe in the same God, we just pray in a different way. And, like Mrs. Brown always says, in this one episode, it's one of my favorite Irish shows, for anyone that doesn't know, but Mrs. Brown in one of her shows says, if we're all heading to the same destination, who gives a shite who the bus driver is? And I know a lot of Christians might attack me for saying that, but it's true. Like, a lot of us fight so much over religion, and like at the end of the day, like if we are all trying to head for the same destination, who gives a shite who the bus driver is? You're all trying to get there. Who cares how you get there as long as you get there? Anyway, let's move on, because I don't want to get into too much of a religious discussion right now. I'm going to wrap up this live because somebody asked me, the last question I can get to for today, I'm so sorry, but somebody asked me how to leave a toxic relationship. What is the first step? I left a toxic relationship with my mother. And I suppose, like, you could be talking about any type of toxic relationship, but I am answering you based on that experience. And my answer is admitting to yourself, accepting to straight away as much as you can, and in as much depth as you can to yourself, that you deserve better. It's really hard to leave a situation that you've become comfortable in. And I don't mean comfortable with your partner or your mother, or whoever the person that you're feeling is a toxic relationship you're having with. I'm not saying comfortable personally, but you're just with them, comfortable personally within yourself, because unfortunately comfort can be a really hard situation to leave. You need to have a chat with yourself where you sit down and you accept that you deserve better. Because it took me 22 years to leave my mum, because I didn't know I did. I had no idea that I deserved better. I accepted that the situation I was in just is what it is, and that I was being selfish for wanting anything more, and for not being appreciative of what I already had. Actually, when you sit down and you realize the situation that you're in is toxic and it's not an environment you should stay in, and that you do deserve better, there is no reason for you to stay. Accept that, admit that to yourself, and then put in a plan of action. Don't just get up and go. That can be really difficult. When you're leaving a comfort zone and all of a sudden you've got to try and find a new one, it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. Put in some sort of plan. I was beyond blessed to leave my mother and then have a father to run to. Not everyone is that lucky, but put in a plan in place. I recognize that. Sorry, just to finish that. I recognize that. but it was still a plan that I had, a lucky one, but it was still a plan that I had. Put a plan in place of somewhere, somehow, some means that you're going to be able to go to once you leave that toxic relationship situation. Okay? Accept, just to summarize this, because then I have to go, accept that the situation that you're in, you deserve better from. Accept that it is time for you to go and find that betterment. Look for that better path for your life, and then set up a plan of action. But if you leave and you're feeling guilty, you're questioning whether what you're doing is right, it's going to play on your mind. And a lot of the time, I ran away from home 3 times before I actually did it properly on the 3rd time. Why? Because the previous 2 times I didn't accept that I did deserve better, and each time I felt guilty and I left, but I went back. I didn't actually go through with my running away from home. I ended up going back, and it was only on the 3rd time where I finally realized, and it was thanks to the people in my life at the time, especially my best friend at the time, who made me realize that I deserved better, that was not okay, that's not a healthy mother-daughter relationship, and that it's not normal, that I then was like, actually, now I can do it. I accepted that I deserved better. I accepted that it was right. The right thing to do was for me to leave. And then I put in that plan of action with my father, and I left. Yeah. Someone said some people are comfortable being sad and they don't recognize the situation they are in. That's what I mean when I say sometimes comfort can be a really hard place to leave, because a lot of the time you are so comfortable you don't even realize that you may or may not, you may deserve better, or that you may wish to leave, that you may want to try and start a better life for yourself. It's not easy. I recognize that. I say this as someone who is, 8 years post running away from home and has had the last, 8 years to work on my mental health and to build the life that I want. But yeah, it's not easy. I do recognize that. I very, very much remember how hard it was to run away from home. All right. I only got through a handful of questions. I had 3 pages. I am very sorry. So perhaps the next live could be a part 2 to that. I'm not sure. I am wondering though, are you free to answer one of my questions about veiling? Yeah, quickly send it in now, and I'll answer it before I can go. My relationship with my father, alhamdulillah, is really good. I'm really glad now that I've been able to develop that. Just answering a question. What was the last thing I was just about to say before that? There was something I was about to say before I wrap it up. But your veiling question, just send that in. Oh, yeah. Send in your veiling question and I'll answer it before I go. Oh, that's what I was going to say. There are a lot of new faces here, which is awesome. And there are a lot of people that usually join the live that... I am Catholic, but for over 1 year I had... Okay. That usually join the live that I think can't join at this time. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to rotate it. 1 week I'm going to go live in the morning, and then in the next week I'm going to go live in the evening. So maybe that way I can get a good balance for everyone, and I'm able to cater to people that it suits in the morning and then people that it suits in the evening. I don't know if that's a good idea. Maybe it's a good idea to be consistent, same time, same day every week. I don't know. What does everyone think? Should I same day every week? Obviously the day will stay the same. But should I do it 1 week like this, 8 a.m. in the morning, and 1 week 9 p.m. in the evening? I had the pressure to cover even more. And how would you feel seeing a Catholic woman in a niqab? Like I said, to each their own. There are many many Christian women. I shouldn't generalize to specifically Catholic, but there are many people that I've seen veiling that are permanent. So I've seen them online, not necessarily. I saw a few people in Europe actually, and in the Middle East that are Christian that permanently veil, but it's obviously not as common as people who just veil when they're praying, like myself. But like sometimes people ask me questions for things like what I think about something. And sometimes I feel like I don't have a right to give my opinion on it because it doesn't really matter what I think. Across the pond, good evening for those that are closer to you. Good morning and good evening. Thank you for joining. Yeah, whatever makes you happy. If you're comfortable veiling permanently or just when you're praying, it doesn't matter. It's really not up like it's not something I feel like I need to give my thoughts on. I share my personal experience with veiling, but I feel like you were asking, what's my thoughts on a Christian wearing niqab? If that's what makes you happy, that's what makes you happy. If that's like I always say, if that's your conviction in Christianity or in your relationship with God, that's your conviction. My conviction is to wear it when I'm praying. I know a lot of Christians that don't wear it when they pray. I know I never used to wear it when I was growing up when I was praying. It was something that I got into when I was older. And when I come across a church, let's say when I'm in the city and I walk past the church, especially St. Mary's Cathedral, and I don't have a scarf with me, I don't have my prayer veil with me, I will still pray even if I don't have my veil on. Personally, I don't believe that God's not going to accept my prayer if I'm not veiled. It's just, it's an element of the religion that I adhere to and I practice. But in a circumstance where I don't have access to one, I will still pray. Especially if I'm walking past a church and I want to just quickly go in and have a prayer. But yeah, I'll just answer the last couple of questions that I saw coming in, and then I will go. Jewish women wear the face veil too, so they don't worry about. I had no idea that was also a thing in Judaism. I actually see what I mean. I love learning, especially about different religions, especially in the Abrahamic faiths, because I know how we're all interconnected. That's amazing. I didn't know that. Have you always lived in Australia? Yes, except for half a year that I spent living in Europe. So I've spent in totality about a year of my life living in Europe, because I've gone on 2 separate trips, but there was one time that I was working there for about a half a year. So that's my very brief experience living abroad. And inshallah, one day I will do it again. I would love to experience life working abroad again. But yeah, that's all in due time, all when the time is right. I believe that when God is ready for me to be working abroad, when it's the time that's right for me, I believe I will go again, inshallah. But anyway, all right. I hope you all had enjoyed whatever beverage it was you were having with me, tea or coffee or whatnot. Your tea would be. But yeah, we'll see. Oh, sorry. The comments move so fast. I love you so much. Love. Hi, Alex. Alex, is that a verified tick I see? Oh my gosh, did you get verified on Instagram too? No way. Listen, I need to get myself into fucking news. Do you know that? That's awesome. That's so good. Where are you? Do a live 2 times if you can. I'm watching at work right now. Whoops. And being very hush. Oh, okay. All right. Yes. All right. I will do that. Don't forget, I'm recording this live. So if anybody watches the recording, you'll see me looking at that camera right now, waving. But so I will always post this on YouTube for you guys to access later. But okay. I think out of fairness, I will go 1 week live in the morning and 1 week live in the evening, just to make life more a balanced lives. Sorry. Just to make lives more balanced, so that people can join sometimes in the morning and sometimes in the evening, whatever's better suited. But like I said, regardless, you can watch this later on YouTube. I will upload it later for you anyway. And let's get Berna verified. Listen, I have been in the news once my entire life, and that was when I was born, because I was the first baby. Fun fact, I'll leave you guys with a fun fact before I have to go. I was the first baby born in all of Australia the year I was born. So I made it in the news from the moment I was born for being that first baby. But yeah, so I don't think I can get verified for that. But anyway, we'll see. You love how open and honest I am. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Much love. She has a YouTube. Why wasn't I aware? It's all in my link tree. That link in my bio, the link to all my different socials is in there. My YouTube, guys, it's the same as my Instagram handle, the same handle, exactly the same. I try to keep the handles the same. If you could morph into a male celeb, who would it be? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know, that's such a random question I've never had to think about before. People have asked me about a female before, and of course I'm only answering this based on the way that she looks and carries herself in film. It's not something I'm answering based on knowing them personally. So in terms of a female, I adore Catherine Zeta-Jones. I think growing up, she was the epitome of everything that I thought was beautiful, and I still think even now she's absolutely stunning. How could I not know my answer to this question? Jesus, the embarrassment right now. If I could morph myself into any male celebrity, it would be Brendan O'Carroll. And if you don't know who that is, Google it. He is the creator, the genius behind the show Mrs. Brown's Boys. And it's my favorite show. It is the most incredible show for me because it provides me with so much laughter and enjoyment and even comfort at times. And mainly because I resonated with it so much. But if I could morph into any male celeb, it would be Brendan O'Carroll, because that man's mentality, the way he is able to make people laugh, even when telling a story with a good morale, with a good moral to it, is amazing. And I would be so honored, so proud to be him, even if it was just for a day. But anyway, all right, guys, I hope you all enjoyed your tea that I often forget to have. Anyway, we're still having it nonetheless. And thank you all for joining, everyone. Good morning or good night from Australia to wherever you are in the world. I hope you all enjoyed this live, and inshallah I will see you all again next Wednesday. I haven't 100% made up my mind yet. I probably am going to rotate between morning and night. We'll see. But I hope you all enjoyed this live. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. And I'll probably next live try to go through the other half, 3/4 that I didn't go through today because I yapped too much. But much love. God bless you all. And inshallah you all have a beautiful week. And I will see you guys next Wednesday. Much love and God bless everyone. Yalla, goodbye.